All right. So back in 2019, the district, and we'll just kind of shorten this up a little bit, that, the district passed a resolution that we were going to reduce greenhouse gases in the city of Iowa City, and the school board were catching a lot of pressure to do that. So you did that. And then in early 2020, you and I conducted a study of the district, and they broke it down, the greenhouse gas emissions by sector, which was building facilities, solid waste, the bus fleet, gasoline vehicles, and water usage. And they came up with a calculation of 16,599 metric tons of carbon dioxide gas emissions. Design engineers went back and recalculated and came up with 16,688. So close enough. We'll use that. It was pretty accurate, but we just kind of put a fine pin to it. So everybody still with me? Okay. So we hired design engineers, and Dwight Shum is the principal, and he's on the call with us today. And Dwight has a pretty extensive background with energy, and we have used him a lot in their company a lot for district projects and to make our buildings more energy efficient. And we just, after searching almost clear across the country from New York to California, we decided the best person was right here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So Dwight's the man, and he's been helping us with this. And my challenge is to take what is a technical subject and try to make it a little bit easier to understand. But let's just start by saying that what Dwight and his team have done so far is they reviewed the greenhouse gas emissions methodology and those numbers, which that developed that 2018 baseline, which we corrected just a little bit. And then he reviewed all the district energy use. And thanks to Les and the business office and their team for helping out and getting that. And we think we have a way to make it more efficient in the future, but I'll come back to that. And we used a number, it's not original, but it's called an energy use intensity number. And what that does is it talks about the amount of square foot, the amount of energy basically per square foot per year. And I'll come back to that in just a little bit. We'll talk about what we found. And then we looked into utility companies and where they get their energy and the energy they use they consume to produce their energy. So for example, do they use coal? Do they use natural gas to produce electric, or are they using wind power? Are they using solar? So we looked into that a little bit, and Dwight had a lot of good conversations with all three of our energy partners, Mid-American, Alliant Energy, and Linn County REC. And then we looked at their projections to become more green, and Mid-American is on a path to get it done. They've got a lot of wind power they're working on, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. Alliance, more so, not more than Mid-American, but they're more so than Linn County REC. They're on a path to also reduce their greenhouse emissions. Linn County REC is subject to different rules, and Dwight can expand on that maybe in a little bit, but they don't have to perform the same way that public utilities do. So they're not on a path. Their projections don't really fit with our goals. So everybody with me so far? Still there? Shake your head. Yeah. Okay. So here's what we found. In trying to keep it simple, I just kind of summarized it. There's the amount of energy that we used in 2018. In 2019, we used, let's see, it breaks it down by activity group. So the amount of, it breaks it down by utility and then by utility group, and maybe that's enough said. If you really want to get into some of that, we can later, but that there was a slight increase in the total energy for 2019, but a significant reduction in the total overall emissions. So what do I mean? The energy we used went up, but our emissions went down because the energy was cleaner. Okay, Mid-American added wind power, so that reduced the amount of emissions, even though that our energy went up. We also added buildings, and the good thing is that these numbers don't reflect all the latest buildings we've done in the last 2 years. So we're putting geothermal in all the buildings that we've done in the past 2 years. This study kind of ends with the addition of the Grant Elementary building. So all of the projects we've done since aren't reflected, which they will be next year and the year after. You'll start to see that number even improve. So our energy use will go up because we've added space and buildings, but our emissions factor should go down. Does that make sense? If the energy is greener, okay. So again, just kind of a number to look at. It's a good indicator is that energy use intensity number there. It's that second major bullet point. And in 2018, that number was 58.2. In 2019, it was 56. And what that is the amount of energy consumed per square foot per year. Okay, so the lower that number, the better. So we've dropped from 58 to 56, which is a reduction of almost 1%. But the buildings was the big part of that at 3.7% of that. So, Dwight, you still there? Why don't you talk a little bit about the path for the three utility companies, if you don't mind? You're more educated.
Sure. Yep, you bet. So the three utilities are really very different in a number of ways, both in terms of what their energy source mix is and also how they account for it. So maybe, and I can just definitely stop me if I start going into too much detail, because I've been in the weeds on this, and I can get into the weeds as much as you want. But from a high level, Mid-American Energy, as probably most of you know, has a pretty public goal of being 100% renewable for its Iowa customers. And we did dig down into the weeds on that to see, is that really something that the district can legitimately claim as being clean electricity? What I mean by that is Mid-American still has coal plants in Iowa, even as they're adding wind. And so what happens to that coal power compared to what happens to the wind power? And without getting into too far into the details, there is an accounting methodology for renewable energy that's in place, which uses renewable energy certificates. And Mid-American does have a program that ensures that the renewable energy certificates go to its Iowa customers. So in other words, when the district purchases a kilowatt hour of electricity from Mid-American, it is also purchasing the renewable attributes of that electricity. It's a little bit of a hard thing to get your mind around, but the way the market works is they're separating the electricity and the renewable attributes so that they're not necessarily always the same thing. And so it's possible for a utility to sell the renewable attributes to an outside party. So you may have heard of how you can purchase green electricity, and what that means is you're purchasing renewable energy certificates. What Mid-American Energy does is it reserves those certificates for its Iowa customers. So essentially, when Mid-American is generating electricity with coal power, a greater proportion of that coal power goes to its out-of-state customers because it's reserving all of the renewable attributes of the wind energy for its Iowa customers. So the Illinois doesn't get any of Mid-American's wind power. Illinois only gets Mid-American's coal power. So anyway, it's probably too much detail, but the details are important because what the district wants to do is have a reasonable and solid way to evaluate what are the emissions that the district is responsible for. So in other words, when you consume electricity, what emissions were created for the electricity that you consumed? And in the case of Mid-American Energy, all of its wind power goes to Iowa customers, so the district gets that renewable attribute of the electricity purchased from Mid-American. Alliant is, we think, similar. They don't have quite as good a documentation. It's not quite as clear, but from the best that we can tell, Alliant is similar, but it doesn't have as much renewable energy as Mid-American. So Mid-American has a goal to be 100% renewable for Iowa within the next roughly 5 years. They were 61% in 2018, 19. Projections are for 2020. They have to file with the Utilities Board every year. Projections for 2020 are 83%. So that's a really big increase from 61%. And 61% in 2019 was a big increase from what they were in 2018, which I think was 45%. So they're definitely on a pretty aggressive path to get their electricity for Iowa customers anyway, to be zero emissions. Lynn County REC is kind of, unfortunately, for the purposes of having a net zero goal, going the opposite direction. And the reason for that is because of the Duane Arnold plant being retired. So Lynn County REC gets their electricity from SIPCO, and SIPCO got a lot of energy from the Duane Arnold plant, which is zero carbon. You can argue about the environmental attributes of nuclear energy, but it is zero carbon. So when they took that offline, that means a bigger portion of their power is coming from coal. And then in addition, the renewable energy that they do have, and even the renewable energy that they're planning to add, they, because of the rules that Duane was talking about, they're actually going to be selling those renewable energy attributes to third parties. So in other words, when the district buys electricity from Lynn County REC, you don't get any of the renewable attributes of the electricity that they have, because they sold those attributes to a third party. So really the emissions associated with electricity purchased from Lynn County REC is actually going up from 2018 to 2019, and 2020 is going to be higher. So, I don't know, Duane, if it's, I could show a graph that kind of illustrates that, if you think that would be helpful.
Well, let's get through the rest of this, and then we'll go back and show them the graphs, and then the way
Okay.
discussion. Yep. I think that'll be the way to do it. So,
okay.
I think that's pretty good information on the three. I think also, I'll just kind of interject here. Dwight and I had a conversation yesterday, and we really think we have a focused strategy for solar, but we'll come back to that. Okay. The district path, this is probably the good news. Okay. So and I'll just read it, projected estimates of district total 2021 emissions, which you can read there, which constitutes a 48% reduction from 2018. And at this pace, the district will have met its goal of a 45% reduction from the 2018 baseline, 9 years ahead of the 2030 target. That's the best news of the day. I can't be any happier than be able to stand up and say that. Now, I think Dwight is double checking the numbers with Mid-American, because that is a big part of this, but we are really doing well. And it's a combination of building improvements, and we're going to take credit for that. We've done a great job with our buildings. They're more energy efficient. We're getting rid of fossil fuels as best we can. We're even talking about what's left, doing that with Facility Master Plan 2.0, but that in conjunction with the efforts that our utility partners are making is the reason we met our goal. And we're at the end of 21, we've met it, but we're not going to stop there. We got to keep going and get her as low as we can. So, we'll, in future steps, we need to take a hard look at the diesel buses, because that's the next big area, and gasoline vehicles. Dwight and I are both suggesting that water usage and waste products is such a low percentage of the total carbon emissions that's not where our focus is, at least for now. It can be later. Those are not the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit are the buildings and the diesel engines. So we can do that. And I'll just interject too, we did put in a grant application for a diesel bus. We were going to have to replace a brand new bus with a diesel bus. And I think that the people at the state were taken aback by that, because they were trying to get old diesels off the road. And so and Dwight, you can confirm, I think we found out that we did not get that grant, but that there's another grant opportunity coming up. So we'll reapply for an electric bus, because we'd like to get one in the fleet and see how it works. see what kind of energy it really takes and how it works. And like we talked before, we'd like to park it up there to our solar demonstration product at Liberty and kind of tie into those cells up there. So anyway, that was a minor setback. We're not giving up. We'll keep pushing forward by that with that.
Let me just add here real quick that the district should feel really good about meeting the 2030 target so far in advance in 2021. I don't know that there are many people that can say they've met that 45% reduction by at this time. So that's a pretty awesome achievement.
It's going to continue to, and the reason it's going to drop is because we're going to continue to add our energy efficient buildings back online, and that it's just good news. I think so. Some of the next steps is building use, the energy usage data, the transportation data, and figuring out a way to really collect that information. And one of the things that Dwight's recommended that we're going to follow up is that the utility companies have what they call smart meters. And maybe you want to elaborate on that just a little bit, Dwight.
Well, I guess actually I'm not really prepared to go into detail on that one tonight, Dwayne.
Well, let's just say that smart meters will give us a dashboard and easily identifiable information. We'll be able to graph information. We'll be able to get spreadsheets. We'll be able to do a lot of things that we don't have, that we kind of physically do now in the office. They sit there and they tell us, they put on a spreadsheet how much energy we use. But if we have a smart meter or some type of system like that where we can actually monitor it and record it and chart it, I think that would be a wonderful thing for the district. We need to come up with a really good way of calculating and keeping track of the diesel consumption. The next steps are to go ahead and complete the first annual report to the board, and then develop a format with that report for future reports. So having said that, the one thing I would like to add, and I will stop sharing this screen and I'll add the charts that we had, is that Dwight and I had a discussion about solar the other day. I know there's been a lot of community interest in solar, and let's do that. Get the solar panels up. That's the answer. Well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. But what I would say to you is that and I'll just try and talk and do this at the same time, is that the solar part of it, I think, is going to be beneficial to the district if we put it in the right place. And what do I mean by that? Well, the energy we're getting from Mid-American is going to be green. I mean, they're really on a path. So it doesn't really help offset anything with Mid-American. But what solar can do is help offset what's not green in Alliant Energy and Lynn County. So if you were going to build a solar farm today, I really think the smart thing for the district to do is to consider putting that solar farm in that Lynn County REC area. And because they're going to have trouble offsetting their carbon emissions, let's put it in that area so we can then offset that. Make sense? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, the only thing I guess that I would add is, yeah, definitely that makes sense. And then I think kind of in parallel or a similar idea is to continue to work on reducing fossil fuel consumption, so natural gas, diesel, and gasoline. But in a lot of ways, you get more greenhouse gas emission reduction bang for your buck by converting natural gas usage to electric than you would by putting solar on a Mid-American building. Because a Mid-American building, in a few years, the electricity is going to be 100% green anyway. So you're better off to convert your fossil fuel use to electric. So yeah, this graph shows the orange. You can't really see the individual buildings, but essentially each bar is the energy use intensity for each building. and the yellow is natural gas, and the orange is electric. So this doesn't show anything about the different utilities, so it's not really directly emissions, but this is just energy use intensity.
So my first reaction to this graph is the top two buildings are the central administration and the physical plant, which I didn't want to see. So, and you know, the ESC is a burned building. It's an energy efficient building. So we need to look into that. Physical plant, I understand. The doors are open, vehicles coming and going, you know, that. And then there's a lot of projects below that, Shimmick, Northwest, Kirkwood, Hills, City, Southeast, Wickham. All these are projects we're just finishing up. You know, that's why they're at the top of that list. They're all going to improve because we've improved the energy in all those buildings. So that's only going to improve. And then two more charts, and then we'll let you ask questions. You know, explain that one a little bit.
Yeah, so this is the 2018 and 2019 emissions. So just in graphic form, what Dwayne was talking about before, so you can see that the total emissions went down from 16,600 down to just under 13,000, which in 1 year is a pretty dramatic reduction. And the different colors on there represent the different sources, with the yellow being natural gas and the different shades of orange being the different electric utilities. The one on the bottom is Mid-American, so you can see the biggest reduction was there. Yeah, the next graph is really probably the most telling. This shows the 2018 and 2019 are actual numbers. 2020 through 2030 are projections. And so you can see in that purple dashed line is the 2030 goal. So you can see that from 2018 to 2019 got about halfway to the goal. And then 2020, pretty close to the goal, and then 2021 be under the goal there. And the other thing that you can kind of see here is the dark orange bar in the middle. That's Lynn County REC. So the size of that bar, you can see, kind of gets bigger as you go down the years, and that's because what we were talking about before, how their emissions are actually going up because of taking the nuclear plant offline. The bottom bar, the light orange, is Mid-American, and it's going down at a pretty steep pace. So that is that graph, and then this one is really just showing what we kind of already talked about, the three different electric utilities and their emissions projections, with Mid-American in yellow on the bottom dropping to 0, Lynn County REC going up to fairly high rate, and Alliant kind of in between, but definitely reducing. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think with that, then we'll just open it up. I'm sure you've had a lot of questions, and I know Charlie does. He always does.
Let's go back to that middle graph. If you can put that back up there again, or I'll just tell
well,
you.
No, I get it.
Okay.
Let me. I got to open the share in here.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Which one now?
The middle one. That one. That's right. That's fine. So on this graph, the natural gas usage, I take it that's a usage, actually stops decreasing after 3 years or so.
Yeah.
So
correct.
Does that mean that we are we're pretty much locked into natural gas usage in all the buildings, and we can't change that?
No, what this represents is the current path. So this is assuming the district doesn't undertake any more initiatives or strategies to reduce greenhouse. So this is what, if you just continue doing what you're doing now, finish the projects that you've started and have planned, you don't do anything, add any new strategies for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, this is where you'll end up. And so that's where right now you have some geothermal projects coming online, and so that's reducing your natural gas usage. But in the next few years, you'll have completed all of those that you have planned, and then that's why it's not going down anymore. Really, the next step in our study that Dwayne and the district have hired us to do is to come up with what are the strategies that make sense to continue reducing beyond the current path.
So that, and just point out to you, Charlie, that in Facility Master 2.0, we've identified some dollars to spend to help reduce natural gas, particularly with boilers that remain in natural gas appliances in our kitchens. So all that's part of that strategy to reduce that number.
Yeah, thanks, Dwayne. So I can tell voters when we get to voting next fall that the HVAC projects that are in the plan will actually reduce natural gas emissions to a very low rate. Is that a fair thing to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, if you just look on the left-hand side there, you can see that yellow bar is pretty big. And then you go a few years, down the line to 2021, and it's about half of what it was.
Right. And that's
Actually
because
less
of the
than half.
geothermal.
Yep.
Okay. And that's because of the geothermal
Correct.
and conversion from gas to electricity in the buildings that we're working on now. Is that right?
That's correct. Okay. Yep. And then, if you focus on the right-hand side of the chart, that kind of tells you what makes sense to focus on for the future. So focus on green, yellow, and dark orange.
Right.
Those are the ones that it makes sense to try to get those down. So green being the diesel for the buses, yellow being natural gas in any building that uses natural gas, and orange being the Lynn County REC electricity.
Okay. And then what I'm looking for generally for from this group is a compelling story that the projects we have included in FMP 2.0 will actually accomplish in a major way reductions in those areas.
I believe so.
And let's go back to the way Mid-America is calculating their generation, their use of their source energy for generating electricity. Dwight, when I was listening to your explanation, I was trying to think about how the people that are very much in favor of doing climate change, energy, carbon reduction in a big way, are going to hear what you said. And a bit of my pessimistic feeling is that, well, they're just trying to show us, they're just showing us that Mid-American is moving paper around. They're not actually reducing carbon atoms in the atmosphere. Can you can you get, will we be able to get a story from you by the time we get to publicity that convinces those folks that we are actually reducing carbon to atoms?
Yeah, so you're right. It's kind of a little bit complicated. I would say that, so first of all, the more wind power that comes online, the more wind turbines that we see going up, absolutely, that is reducing carbon. There's no question. You can't say that you bring a wind turbine online and have it generating electricity and that it is not reducing carbon because it's generating electricity and it's zero carbon. So if it weren't generating electricity, you'd be burning more coal or natural gas or something. So certainly that's, I think, a pretty compelling case to say that there is less carbon going into the atmosphere. I guess that where I come down on it is the environmental community really has come up with this idea of renewable energy certificates as a way to combat exactly what you're talking about, which is greenwashing or making claims of renewable electricity that is double counting, saying that you put it in and you're going to count it here and you're going to count it in the place where you sold it. So that whole concept of renewable energy certificates and renewable energy accounting is specifically created to combat greenwashing and to combat the tendency for people to try to double count. And so the fact that Mid-American has their paperwork in order to show that those renewable attributes are staying in Iowa. And then you contrast that with Lynn County REC, which is not to say, not bad mouthing them at all. They're very upfront about it. And I give them a lot of credit. they say right on their website, right on their reports, we are selling the renewable energy credits to third parties. So they don't try to hide that. They don't say, oh, look, we put in 400 megawatts of solar. They say that, but then they also do have the asterisk that says, but we sell those renewable attributes to a third party. So, so they're upfront about it.
Yeah, the reason they do that, Dwight, is to show profit to their private investors.
Yeah, yeah. Well, or to their members, really, for the REC really is a sort of, it's a cooperative. So they're doing it because their membership has said they want to prioritize the lowest cost for electricity, and so they can get a lower cost to their members by selling the renewable attributes of their generation, and then returning those proceeds to the members, and that's why they do it.
So the pessimist that stands up at the board meeting, Charlie, is going to say we're just shipping the carbon off to Illinois.
Well, and to me, a response is that, I mean, I think what I heard, the climate change people want, they want us to do generation with photovoltaic and get away from reliance upon energy providers. And to me, that might make some sense for the REC located buildings.
Right.
But we don't have that in the plan right now, as I understand it.
I don't have a solar farm in the plan, but some of the preliminary discussions, well, with when Mid-America, not the REC, was, that they would participate in a solar field, and we'd provide the land, they'd provide the solar array. But I can't say that for the REC. I don't know if they'd be interested in that or not. I don't know, Dwight, did you have any kind of discussions with them?
I didn't. I think, the challenge probably with both of those might be in exactly what we were just talking about, which is who gets credit for that renewable energy. It seems like maybe people might be conflating, some of the constituents might be conflating energy independence with renewable energy. So, independence from a utility is one thing, and renewable power is maybe another. I guess to my way of looking at it, if the district were to put in solar generation on a building that is connected to Mid-American, to me, that feels like what you're doing is instead of buying wind power from Mid-American, you're generating your own solar power. It doesn't seem to me that it all kind of depends where you're going to draw the boundary. You're going to draw the boundary around the district, or you're going to draw the boundary around Iowa City, you're going to draw it around Iowa, or you're going to draw it around the United States or the whole globe. At some point you have to say, what do we have control over? And really what the district has control over, where you're going to buy your electricity, or are you going to generate it yourself? And so to my way of thinking, if you put in solar power on a Mid-American building, in terms of, and you draw the boundary kind of around the district and what emissions are associated with your energy use, you haven't really changed your emissions. You've changed whether you're getting it from wind and the utility, or whether you're generating it yourself, but you haven't really changed your emissions. If instead you buy less electricity from Lynn County, and that electricity has a lot more emissions associated with it, and instead you put solar power on a Lynn County building and you buy less electricity from Lynn County, then I would argue that the district is in that case reducing their emissions.
So a long-winded answer to your short question, Charlie.
Yeah, which is not going to work very well in a voter education thing.
I understand.
Right?
We can
it does illustrate to me that a simple-minded thing response is that, well, then for me to vote for this master plan, I've got to see that we are actually going to wean ourselves off of the REC grid.
So I think that the challenge is for me and others here in the district is to identify more of the
How to do
Facility
that,
Master
yeah.
Plan 2.0 is towards solar or emissions reduction.
Mhm.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, as
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand it, going towards solar locally or by the solar generation by the district is the only way to reduce emissions for buildings that are located in a REC served area.
Mhm. You know, Dwayne, if you go
So
back
Matt,
up to the other chart, maybe there's a way to focus on that middle one there. Yeah. So we've got the green and the yellow and the orange. Those are your big emissions sources. You've got that green part, the yellow part, and the orange. And yellow and orange are almost the same. Orange is the biggest, but not by a lot. Your yellow is almost as big. So and your green is just a little bit smaller. So really, those are the three areas where you have the ability to really impact your emissions, and those are the ones that have to go down to get that graph to go to zero. And maybe some form of graphic like that might be the way to kind of get that point across. Where do the emissions come from that are associated with the district's energy use? Comes from buses, from burning natural gas, and from purchasing electricity from dirty sources.
so
Right.
if this graph, I'm sorry, Lisa, you let me finish, then I'll be quiet. If this graph can show projected emissions reductions because of what's happening, what we're going to do with the Facilities Master Plan 2.0, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, sorry, Lisa, I don't know if you have another question. Mine was going to be kind of bigger picture with the RPS and the PEPL and how this relates, but go ahead.
I have a question on this specific graph, if I could jump in. So, and I'm sorry if I missed it. What is the strategy to reduce the natural gas emissions?
Well, first of all, we've identified money for HVAC renovations in 2.0, a significant number. And part of that would be to divest ourselves of all the boilers in the district. We have a lot of big, large, inefficient boilers yet. We just got rid of them at West. We still have some at City. We still have some like at Horn, places like that where they still have a boiler. Some have been replaced with higher efficiency gas boilers, but we need to look at putting in electric boilers where we rely on water for heat. So we can do that. And then all of our kitchens have steamers and equipment that rely on natural gas. So we need to look at replacing kitchen equipment with high efficient electric devices that's cleaner energy. So I think that's the way forward.
So as I understand, looking at this graph, blue and green, electric vehicles, natural gas, upgrading equipment so that they're more energy efficient.
Right.
Orange, Linn County REC, that orange, solar. That's like the dumbed down version of kind of the
Solutions.
big picture of how we get each of those areas down.
I would agree with you.
Yep.
And I remember some vague numbers from when we had the climate presentation about the transportation fleet as well as the solar panels, and none of it's cheap. So it doesn't seem like we can do all three at the same time. That it kind of is going to have to be a phased approach.
Now, the district's goal is to be zero by 2050, right?
Right.
So this only shows to 2030. So I think the other thing you might want to consider is spreading it out to 2050 so that you can see kind of that whole time period.
Well, I'll give you Chase's answer too, Lisa. In the bus fleet, we don't own, we lease. So, we renegotiate that every few years. And there's the possibility that we could renegotiate that with the bus company to bring in electric buses. So we could do that. And that's an advantage. If we owned them all, we own 100 brand new buses at 125 grand a piece.
Right, we can just renegotiate the contract and say
Right.
that's what we need in our contract, moving forward, and then we'll only get bids for that. Yep.
The new buses are triple. So, but we can work that out in the lease. So it's that cost is deferred on an annual basis, I guess, to the lease.
Well, where I'm going with this is it seems like buses and equipment are things that we have to buy. Like there's no way our equipment is magically going to get more energy efficient. We have to replace the boilers if we want to do that. But it just, and I get that Lynn County shut down their nuclear plant, but it just seems that they are really kind of behind the times in the direction that this green energy is going. And I'm wondering if we focus first on the things that we absolutely know we have to do, right? And that's where we put our money. Is there any chance that Lynn County REC is going to catch up and start creating clean energy like Mid-American? Or is that just like wishful thinking?
Yes,
Yeah,
Lisa, what I heard Dwayne say was that Glenn County's already made the decision to go for lower cost generation, which is not low emission generation.
No, and I heard that. And I guess what I'm saying is that a 5-year decision, or is
Right.
that their like 50-year decision? Because it's
Right.
it really
It's not a 50-year decision. I can tell you that for sure. My own personal opinion is I feel like the things that you can do that you know will have the biggest effect is to eliminate as much as possible your own fossil fuel use, and then convert those to electric. My sense is that the trend in general is going to be across providers is going to be for the electric grid to get cleaner. I don't think, so what we're showing here is no improvement on Lynn County REC. I don't know that that's, I would expect that's not going to be true. Certainly through 2050, it's not going to be true. But if you continue to burn natural gas through 2050, you know for sure you're going to be emitting carbon through 2050. If you convert that to electric, then as your electric providers, as the grid gets greener, your emissions will go down. So if it were me, I would prioritize, first of all, reducing direct fossil fuel consumption, because that's a one-for-one guaranteed reduction. And then second, reduce your electric usage in the areas where it's associated with the most emissions.
Other questions, guys?
So we can put this into a coherent story, Matt, by July or so.
Yeah, in the piece I was going to talk about with the story is, and I think this is probably continual conversation for operations is, and you guys might have heard me say it at the last committee meeting, we have to articulate a plan for the RPS and for the PEPL, but I think we also need to have some conversation on not overdoing it either. We're not asking for a GO bond. There's other districts that have a RPS and a PEPL vote tonight, and we have a lot down on a plan on a page already for what people are doing. And so if we weren't approaching a second facility master plan, we would still be asking for RPS and PEPL, right? And we'd still be asking for those things. We wouldn't be maybe potentially asking for the PERL. That PERL is part of the conversation. And so I just think it's finding that right balance and trying to give ourselves some room to being able to articulate those things like you're talking about, Charlie. There's still going to be important parts we want to articulate and be very transparent around. I guess I'm just trying to balance, what are fair expectations the community should have from us about asking for these votes of support. And it shouldn't necessarily be to have a whole plan articulated, but we also know that that's the frame of understanding they're coming in with. And so we're going to have to meet that need a little bit. Is that making sense?
Yeah, it does to me. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're making really smart decisions and getting this climate stuff right. Like the last thing I want to do is spend $10 million on a solar farm for our northern school districts and then have Lynn County REC come in 2 years later with green energy at Mid-American levels, because man, have we just misspent some taxpayer dollars, right? Like,
and I think that's a good concern to have. I mean, I think that's, thinking ahead on it. And like Dwight was talking about there about it not being a 50-year decision. And, these companies aren't going to not do anything over that period of time. But we also know we have local pressure to control what we can. And so trying to prioritize that need, I think, is the important part about what can we control first and deal with. And it's not like the conversation has to be over after that.
it also sounds like you guys can turn the temperature down a couple degrees at the ESC building.
I know. I wonder if I should turn my space heater off that's running right now after watching that. I was like, geez, I better turn this thing off in here. Apparently,
We got to figure that one out.
I don't know if we need new windows or what's going on here exactly, but
We just put new windows in 2 years ago, man.
that's what I thought. I thought they were new, and then I see that and I'm like, how are we possibly more than a high school right now? But anyways.
At least you have a gas appliance, right, Matt? Not a natural or electric, not a natural
Yeah,
gas.
it's an electric one. It's in the wall, so yeah, no kerosene's being burnt or anything. Don't worry about that.
We replaced the windows. We added insulation on the roof. We put a new chiller in. I think we're down to a boiler probably. Jeff, is that it? That's what's left. And it's that boiler that's killing us out there.
It's the boiler.
Well,
Yeah, that would make sense.
I also
So the
bet it
other-
has something to do with you guys running the air because you work all year long, right? And the city's not running air conditioning in July.
Yes, it
Maybe they
is.
are, I don't know.
Yes, it is. We have to, all of our schools run air year round.
Really?
Because that's also that's how we dehumidify the buildings too, just like your house. So, but the ESC, but part of it is, we have such high ceilings back where the old printing process took place. And so it is a large building. It's not a
Yeah,
small
it's
building.
bigger than you think. You're right, Jeff.
Well,
When you're back
So
there.
the other thing, I guess that I just for clarity, that graph was per square foot. So you're not using more energy at ESC than you are at City High,
Okay.
for example. You're
Not
using
more total. You're
more,
just using more square
more
foot.
energy per square foot. So that's normalized based on the size of the
So we're
building.
the most inefficient. Maybe not the biggest use, but the most.
Right, exactly, right.
Yeah, but we do run those, like Jeff said, Lisa. I remember one of my years I was at Southeast, we didn't do something with the air conditioning down there that year. Maybe I don't know, but we ended up with a black mold problem and part of that. And so like you said, I mean, it's a big dehumidifying effort for us too throughout, but
There are big
Well-
ventilating fans in the back of this building that run a lot back there, and those doors are open. And so we just need to do a better job of keeping the building tightened up.
Well, and Dwight, I
So-
appreciate you clarifying that because my next question was going to be how in the world is Shimmick using more
Right,
energy?
right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That
Well,
makes
Shimmick will look very different as soon as the geothermal is online there too.
So Lisa, back to your point about we have to choose at what point in time we're willing to go ahead into the future without reducing carbon emissions from this source. And I don't disagree with you of that. That's a reasonably prudent thing to make a plan for. I think that the climate change people are going to say that you're supposed to be you should have reduced carbon emissions to zero yesterday. So we're not satisfied with your saying that you're going to wait until REC reduces theirs before we do before we take some. We're basically saying that we're going to allow carbon emissions at some level until REC does something. I think the climate change people will say, no, you need to do something to reduce carbon emissions to zero now.
No,
I
and
don't-
I think that would be a fair criticism from the climate change advocacy folks, but I don't think that's necessarily the messaging. I see a decent list of things. And it's kind of like how we're approaching this whole facilities master plan, right? We've got our A group and it's like, we know we got to do A group. Like that's all the leftover stuff from the original. Like we just got to do A group. And then B group is, and that's where I would put solar for Lynn County REC, Charlie, is kind of in this B group. Like we're pretty committed.
Right.
We know it's a good idea, but we've got a few things ahead of it that we just absolutely know we have to do. And we're not,
Right.
and then we do those first. And then when it's time to move to solar to Lynn County, we still look and say, before we start, breaking ground on this solar field, where are we? Where's Lynn County REC?
right, you reassess it at that point, right?
Yeah.
Once you accomplish your other
And
ones, then
If they've made no changes, then absolutely, I agree with you, Charlie. Like, we can't wait 20 years for Lynn County. But I'm just wondering if we can do the projects that we know we have to do first. And because it shocks me with how important climate change is that Lynn County REC is not going to change. I find that just difficult. Like, read the room, Lynn County.
well, and the pressure's only going to continue to increase, right? I mean, I think,
Yeah.
that's that's what you think or at least hopefully we think the safe bet is that the pressure is going to continue to increase there, and their motivation to change will become increased as well.
Yeah. Well, and
I don't disagree with
just
that, with your thinking there. Right?
yeah, and just to say, they do have a challenging situation with the nuclear plant going offline, because that was their zero carbon source, and now it's gone. Not that they didn't know it was coming and could have planned for it, but it does create a challenge for them.
And I have to say, I'd be interested in if Lynn County wants to explore partnering with a solar project with us. I that quick comment, and I know that it sounds like that's just very beginning stages, and who knows if we'd get to keep the energy from it. And if we didn't get to keep the energy from it, it's less attractive, but it sure sounds at least worth exploring.
Sure.
And maybe that would make sense during a publicity effort to try to show people that we're open to looking into that. We're not just.
I think we certainly.
And I also, to me, I'm also thinking we actually have an educational institution to run here too, and that's that makes up a lot of what we're trying to do with the FMP. Okay.
We could certainly approach them, see if they have any interest. Well, I think that concludes our report, Matt.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. Lisa, the other item I had was if you wanted a portrait of a graduate update, or if you want to wait for that on Tuesday with the full board, I can give. I mean, you were at the first meeting, I believe, so I don't know if you want to spend any time on that tonight or not.
Well, we can do a quick one. Charlie might be interested.
Sure. So Charlie, thank you, Dwight.
I'll say goodbye. Yep.
Appreciate it. Yep. Charlie, we had a good meeting. I think it was good. The content was good. Our attendance was lower than we would have liked to see. Our design team, we didn't quite have the participation level that we would have liked to see there. I followed all up with an email this week. You probably saw that email come through to the board email address there. I copied you guys on that. We had a few late cancellations that day, other people that just hadn't let us know. We'd sent at least three emails prior to the event trying to encourage people to let us know if they weren't going to attend, and reminder of the Zoom link and some of that. So we thought it was good to follow up again this time. The good thing from the folks that were there, the 70 people that did attend, which is still a very nice sized design team, I'll tell you. I mean, like, we were shooting over the moon, to have the 100+ that we had before on the design team. But we had good representation from all groups: students, teachers, administrators, community members, business community, school board. We did have a good cross section of the community, so it wasn't like there was any one stakeholder group that really dominated the conversation. And we just had a couple great comments from students at the end of the meeting too, to really pull it together. How she compared to the situation around COVID, and very similar to the topic of climate change, about how there's things we do for the greater good in COVID to protect us all, just like we would need to do for climate. And so I think some powerful comments, good breakout group conversation. I went into a lot of different breakout rooms, had an opportunity to hear those conversations. And so I think it was a good meeting overall. It was really kind of this time focused on that kind of changing landscape conversation with the world of work, innovation, the environment, emotional intelligence, and those big components. And then we'll be excited for meeting 2 here in March. So the other good thing, I'll just wrap it up with this. The other good thing is that anybody would have missed the first meeting. It was, almost identical outside of the conversation to the meeting 1 from last year. And so they can jump right into meeting 2 and be just fine.
Great, thanks. Just an aside, Lisa, as I remember correct, if I remember right, the board decided that we were only going to have the board representatives actually attend these sessions and not the other board members. Is that right?
Yes, it's myself and Ruthina and JP, and that way we don't have a quorum.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Thanks.
And I'll say, having gone to the first one last year and the first one this year, Matt, I'd be really interested in seeing if Battelle can show us the data between the responses from last year and the responses to this year, because I'll tell you, a lot of the prompts were the same. and the answers, like COVID has just changed our
Change the landscape. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. At last year, it was much more like integrate technology and future forward. And this year, my small groups were very much like human interaction.
Yeah.
People like,
Right.
we
No
don't need the
surprise.
iPhone to
Yeah,
make our
yeah.
hair cutting appointment for us.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. We might have that data still. I know Colin sent us the follow-up from our first one. We still had a couple people that were wanting to complete the link. So I'll probably ask him for an updated data set, but my guess would be we still have that in an email inbox or on a spreadsheet somewhere from last year. And if we don't, I'll ask him if he can get that for us, but that would be interesting to do a comparable.
yeah, I think it would be. And then, because then I think we have to sit back and say, do we need to analyze all this data with a grain of salt? Like, are these, if it's really impacted from COVID, is that impact long lasting?
Right. You want to make sure you don't get too far off the mean, right?
Right.
If we had some that was way an outlier and we think it's due
Yeah.
to COVID, we don't want to set our whole vision mission based on a, pandemic experience.
Yes, because we've all been in our houses for a year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because we're all just dying to hang out with somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I would be interested if we could break it down that way. But I think I had my F&P hat on during it. And I do think we're going to get some nice direction.
I think we are too. It's going to be exciting work. So I'm looking forward to it.
For these remote sessions, Matt, are we able to do keep track of the demographics of who's attending? So we know if we're getting
We kept track of
representation or not.
attendance. Yeah. Of who's there and who wasn't there, Charlie. Yep.
Okay. Okay, good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's all
then,
we have.
Lisa, just for the last thing today, maybe we have a lot of playgrounds in the FMP proposal plan right now, which I think is great. And I think we probably would be well advised to try to emphasize that they're there, what we're planning on doing. It's a popular thing. And I think that would help a lot of parents and community members, to accept this plan. So.
No, I agree. And I think that emphasis also on that, it's the Pebble, right? That is primarily for playgrounds. So, I just remembered Ben's accessibility playground presentation and sitting through it and being like, wow, like there's like some really amazing stuff happening with our playgrounds that probably on one of these elementary school design committees you don't know about. And saying, Ben, how would you feel about an extra $900,000 a year to work on playgrounds? Right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think you're right,
Clear,
Charlie.
just to be clear, he doesn't get it all.
But no, and I think it's important for the community to understand that, right? Because the whole point of Pebble is that they're not playgrounds for elementary schools, they're centers for our community. They're places where anyone in Iowa City can go and play soccer in the park or do basketball or have access to equipment. And it doesn't matter if you have school kids or if you're grandparents and you have kids, your grandkids are visiting from Williamsburg. Guess what? There's school park nearby that's top notch that they can play on.
Right.
Well, anything else?
Not from us, guys.
All right. Well, our next meeting will be in April 6th. That seems hard to believe.
Crazy.
One question. Do you want us to forward that preliminary report that Dwight did on energy, or just hang on to it for a while?
Forward it to the whole board, Dwayne?
Yeah.
I think we could just, it might be a good attachment for us to just go ahead and include when we do the next operations committee update at the board meeting, if you guys would be okay with that.
That's on Tuesday. That's at the meeting on the 9th. So, but I think we should, I thought it was really helpful.
So why don't we just go ahead and we'll upload it so that's going to be on the 9th already. Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and put that one we'll just attach it for next week's agenda then.
All right, thanks.
All right, Charlie, you got to make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'd move adjournment.
All right, I'll second it. And then Charlie and I both agree. So
Well, agree, right?
we'll see everybody later. Thanks all.
Hey, guys.